Okay. All right. So my stream should be working. I'm just going to get you guys the link here. And share, copy. All right. So once you're on the link here, you will want to mute your audio on the Google Meet because it will be a little bit delayed. All right. So as long as you're listening to the YouTube stream, it won't feel like there's a delay. Okay, it'll just all seem like it's in real time. It should, Ricardo. I decided to YouTube this semester because I got a lot of feedback last semester that the resolution was too poor when I used Google Meets, especially when I recorded or streamed. So people couldn't read like some of the text on my screen. So when I used YouTube, it was much clearer. Yeah, so I think that that's the main reason. Also, once I've streamed, the video is right there, and you guys don't have to wait for it, so it's there immediately. So I think for those reasons, it was preferable to use Google or YouTube. All right. Okay, so this is my first time doing this for a full semester, guys, so please do bear with me. Just gotta manage all these windows here, and I just want to make sure this video is unlisted, so it's not gonna go to all my subscribers. And I would do a private video as well, but I feel like that's just an extra hoop to jump through that makes this slightly more complicated than it needs to be. If I can have a regular kind of YouTube stream that it always goes to the same one, I think I would do that. But yeah, you don't need to leave both open. No, if you want to close one down, you can. I'll keep the Google Meet open just so that anybody who might arrive late, I can tell them where to go for the YouTube stream. Okay, but otherwise you can close it. All right, guys. So here I am. This is Blender. All right. So everyone has Blender open. Turn my volume up. Hang on. Is that better? Hello, hello. Yes, yes, better. Okay. I'm trying to turn up my volume. I don't know if it's good. All right, cool. All right, great. So this is Blender. My version of Blender is going to look a little different from yours, but I'll walk you through the very, very first steps. Yeah, the video will be posted. Yeah. So basically, not only will the video be posted, once you have the link, you already have the video. So yeah, so that's kind of the advantage of doing it this way. You can go back in real time if you miss something. You can just go back right away, and then this will just be there. Okay. So I'm going to just delete some of this stuff. So when you start Blender, you will have a few things in your scene. You'll have a cube, you'll probably have a light, and you'll probably have a camera. All right, so there are a couple different ways to control Blender. There's the old version, which I use, where I have to right click to select things. And then there's the newer mode, which I think is the industry standard mode, or even Blender normal mode. Now, by default, to select something, you can just left click on it. Okay, so you can left click on something to select it, or you can box drag around something to select it. Okay, and you know something is selected when it turns orange. Okay, and you can select multiple things. This is the general file, yes. Okay, so there's a couple of ways we can start doing 2D animation in here. We can use this general file, okay, and tweak a few things so that we can start using our grease pencil. Or there's an easier way where we can go File, New, 2D Animation. Okay, and if we do that, it'll put us straight into an environment where we can do 2D animations. However, if we only rely on that, there are things we can easily do to get stuck. Okay, we can easily change some things and we do not know how we can get back to those settings. So from my perspective, I'd like to show you how you can go from a general file and set it up close more like that, just so that whenever you need to, you can figure that out. All right. Yes, you should bring out the Wacom tablet for sure. Yeah, you will need a Wacom device for this semester. Wacom or equivalent, right? So you can use Huion, or I think I forget what the other one's called, but yeah, you can use, or Gaomon. Yeah, you can use any of those as well. All right, because Blender's animation does support. It does support pressure sensitivity. All right. Okay. All right. So it looks like most of us are in the call now. So if anybody's having a problem getting on the call, you can leave a message in the Google chat, but otherwise I will just focus on the YouTube stream. So a couple things we want to do when we start. First, we'll go to File. If you haven't already, you can just choose General. Okay, you can load a general file setup, and again, you'll have a light, a cube, and a camera. If you press the 0 key on your numpad, it'll give you the view through your camera. Okay, I'm just going to turn on my screencast keys here as well. And you'll see I have a whole bunch of tabs here on the right hand side of my my 3D viewport. And that's just because I have a lot of plugins. You guys won't have nearly as many as this. And that's okay. Okay, the way you can bring this up, by the way, is tapping the N key to bring up your navigation tools, your navigation panel. Okay, and I will say, learning Blender will be slightly, if not significantly, more of a challenge than learning Photoshop was. Just because a 3D application can do so much more than a 2D application. Oh, okay. I'm trying to get. I thought I got rid of the Gladiatron overlay, but thank you. Is it still there? I don't know how to get rid of it. Maybe I can delete it. Is it gone? No? Yeah, I tried deleting on my OBS. Okay, let me see if I go to teaching mode. Delete. Okay, is it gone now? No, it's still there. Turn off studio mode. What about now? Is it good now? I can, yeah, actually I can see on my stream. I think it's gone now. Thanks. I think it is gone now. Can someone confirm that it's gone? Awesome. Beautiful. All right, cool. So, so what I want to do is, yes, sorry, we can press the N key to bring up our navigation tools. And on the left-hand side here, we see how you have our actual tools. Okay, so you can press the T key to bring up your tools. Okay, we have this thing called the cursor in our tools. And that's basically this little red crosshair that we have. For me, I press left click to place it, but I think if you are using left click to select, I think it's either right click to place or control right click or something like that, for you guys to place that. And the way you can think of this is basically like the same way you would think of a the blinking crosshair, the blinking line in a word processing document. Wherever this is placed and then you start typing in a word processing document, that's where the text will appear. In this, wherever this is placed and then I add a new object, the object will appear at that position. Okay, so I'm just going up to the top menu here, add mesh, say cube, and you'll see I'm able to place a cube in the scene like so. All right, cool. So I'm just going to select these and delete them. And you guys will probably be wondering, how do I tumble my view? How do I kind of look around like so? The easiest way is to just press the middle mouse button. Okay, and then you can easily tumble. Okay, and then to zoom, you can hold down middle mouse and control and drag your cursor and you'll zoom in and out. And then to pan, you can hold middle mouse and shift to pan around your scene like so. Okay, to get the view that you want. Okay, so that's kind of one of the first things that you need to get comfortable with is just changing your camera angle, right? So changing your view of your scene, using a middle mouse to tumble, middle mouse and shift to pan, middle mouse and control to zoom. Now, if you're on a laptop and you don't have a middle mouse, it's a bit of an issue, but there is a way to get around that. You can replace the middle mouse click by Alt and left click. Okay, so if you change a setting here, and for this we will actually have to change a setting. So just make sure you're paying attention to what I'm doing now. So I'll go to File, you have to press Shift or Control first. It doesn't matter. So you can either press Control first and then do that, or you can press this. Oh, sorry, you do have to press Control or Shift first. My apologies. My apologies, Connor. Yes, you have to press Shift first. Alright, but for those who don't have a middle mouse, or if you're on a laptop, I'm just going to show you what we can do to kind of emulate our middle mouse click. We're going to go to File, or actually Settings, sorry, Edit. We're going to go to Edit, Preferences, and then we will, and I have to realize also, what I'm realizing too is, guys, since it's not in real time, you guys are slightly behind when I say something, so I might ask a question and I have to wait for the answer. It's kind of interesting. But we're going to go here to, I believe it's Interface, or no, sorry, not Interface, but Input. Input. Okay, and there's a mouse input checkbox that I've checked here, which is emulate 3-button mouse. Yeah, I do recommend getting a mouse. Or actually, Blender with a Wacom stylus is actually not so bad, as long as you set the buttons properly. If you set your buttons correctly, like to middle mouse and right mouse, it's actually not so bad. But yeah, mouse is probably the best way to work with any 3D application. It's very, very hard on a trackpad. All right, so emulate 3-button mouse. Make sure that is checked on. Okay, that way Even if you don't have a middle mouse, you can hold down Alt and left mouse, okay, and it'll see that as a middle mouse click. Okay, so right now I'm actually pressing Alt and left mouse, but it's recognizing that as a middle mouse click. Okay, so now to zoom, it's Alt left mouse and Control. So Control Alt left mouse to zoom. Okay, to pan, Shift Alt left mouse. All right. Okay. So we're actually going to delete this object. So you want to select it. Just select that object. And you can either press X to delete or delete to delete. I'll just hit X. It's going to give me a little menu under my cursor. I'll say yes, go ahead and delete that. Okay. And now I'm going to get my 3D cursor here. Okay, and I'll put that back into the center of my scene. But it's hard to just click and put it into the center of my scene. Generally speaking, you're going to have to use a hotkey. Okay, or you're going to have to go into your navigation panels. And I think it's the second from the top. Okay, the second tab from the top. Our view panel will have this drop down for 3D cursor. So I can basically just drag over top of each of these fields and hit 0 to zero that out. Okay, so that's basically the coordinates of the 3D cursor. So, okay, because we're in a 3D space, we do have an X, Y, and Z coordinate. You can see that the X here is left to right. Okay, the Y is front to back. Excuse me. And then the Z coordinate will be running vertical. Okay. So we can see if I zero out this parameter on X, we see that that cursor is now aligned to 0 on the X axis, then 0 on Y, and then 0 on Z. Puts it at 0, 0, 0. Or we can press Shift C. Shift C will just put it straight into the center of our scene. Shift C will just snap the 3D cursor straight into the center of our scene. And then the last thing we can do is Shift S. If we press Shift S, that will bring up our cursor options. A lot of really kind of advanced options that we can do here. Basically, the one we would want to use is cursor to world origin here. Okay, so we can basically put this here, press Shift S, drag towards this option, and just left click, and it will snap to our world origin. All right, cool. Okay, so now one of the things we want to look at, how do we start working with our grease pencil? So how do we do 2D animation in Blender? And I will show you how. Okay, everybody with me so far? How did I get that to the world origin? So 3 different ways. The first way, I can go into my navigation panel here. Okay, I can either, there's a little kind of arrow that I can click on to bring this open. And then in the second tab, okay, so there's one tab here. I have lots of tabs, so it's hard for you to see probably, but I can mouse scroll, mouse wheel up and down to go through my tabs. But the second tab here is my view tab, and down here I have a 3D cursor. So I can set these parameters all to 0. Okay, if I set them all to 1, you see that my 3D cursor kind of starts moving off into space, right? Okay, so that's one way we can control the 3D cursor position. Another way is to press Shift C. Okay, Shift C will snap our 3D cursor to the center. Okay, and then the last way, the way that gives us the most control over where our 3D cursor goes, because say I have this object selected, or this object. If I have this object selected, I can press Shift S. Okay, Shift S is another way. So Shift S, and I can do cursor to world origin, like so. Okay, or I can do Shift S, and then there's other options here. I can do cursor to selected, and you'll see that my cursor snaps to the thing I have selected. Okay, or I can do Shift S, and I can do selection to cursor, so it'll snap the thing I have selected to the position of my 3D cursor. So I can use the 3D cursor as a utility to basically move things around. I can use it as a pivot point for rotations and scaling and everything like that. So there's a whole ton of functionality that it has. We don't need to really get into that today, but just be aware that, you know, it is there and it can do a lot for us. A lot of times we can just set it to where we want it to go and just ignore it and never move it again. Okay. But there are times when we want to take advantage of the fact that we can do some really cool things with it. All right, so now what we want to do, if we want to start drawing, we want to add what's called a grease pencil object. Okay, so we have to add a object, and every object in our 3D scene, or everything in our scene is an object. So our light is an object. Our camera here is an object. That cube that we started out with is an object. And if you've used Unity, you can kind of think of those as actors, right? So in a Unity scene, you have these different actors, and each of them just basically has a coordinate space. It has a position in a XYZ three-dimensional space, and each object class has its own set of functions and functionality. Okay, but each also has that position coordinate. It has that that's transform coordinate where it has an XYZ rotation, location, and scale. All right. So what we want to do, we want to add an object, but this is a special type of object called a grease pencil object. Okay. So the way we add new objects, up top and left here in the 3D viewport, you'll see that there's a little window or a little kind of a little button that we can press, or a little menu item called Add. And if we click on that, we can get our grease pencil. Okay. So we get our grease pencil, and we want the blank type. Okay, we want a blank grease pencil. Okay, so right when we first do it, you won't really be able to tell that anything happened, and you might start trying to draw and nothing will happen, right? We have to tweak one last thing before we can start drawing. Okay, what we have to do is any object in Blender has different modes. Okay, so one of those modes is object mode, okay, which is basically its transformation space mode, like its location, rotation, and scale. Where does this thing exist in 3D space? Okay, but then up top here, you see where it says object mode, there's a little dialog that I can click on and drop down. And I'll see that I have a whole bunch of different options in here, okay? And these options are unique to the type of object that I have selected, in this case a grease pencil object. If this was a 3D mesh, okay, like the cube that I started out with, the options here would be different, okay, and they'd be related to the types of things that I would do with a 3D mesh. But because this is a grease pencil object, I have an option here called Draw. Okay, so just to show you again, we've created a grease pencil object. So you won't be able to see it. You will be able to see that it exists here in our scene outliner. This is basically a list of all of the elements that exist in our scene. So I have this object here called G pencil. Okay, I also have an object called camera, and I also have an object called light. G pencil is my grease pencil object. Okay, and this is basically an object consisting of several grease pencil layers. Okay, but with the grease pencil object selected, if I go to object mode, I have this option here for draw. Okay, so I want to click on that. Once I've done that, now I can start drawing. I can actually go in and I can draw It's hard to see, but actually I can draw in 3D space. Okay, and if I tumble around, you'll see that I have a stroke here that exists in three-dimensional space. Okay, so I can draw a character like so. Alright, and that is basically, that's it. That's how we kind of start making drawings in Blender using the grease pencil. It's really, once you kind of have it set up, it's fairly straightforward. It's just a matter of kind of getting to this point that might be a little tricky. Now there are a couple of things that we can do to make this even better, at least in terms of being able to visualize it better. And if we were to open up a 2D animation scene, just a regular grease pencil scene, those things would be done for us automatically. But I'll show you guys how to set that up from scratch, so that if you ever do get stuck or mixed up, you will be able to kind of hopefully troubleshoot your way back to safety. So I have to remember a couple of these things. These are some of this is a little unfamiliar to me, but I believe up here you'll see we have these empty circle and a filled in circle slightly overlapping, like a little bit of a Venn diagram. We can click on that and we have our viewport overlays, and we have one here called canvas. Is that it? No. So it might not be in there. It might be over here in our shading. So if we go to the right, you'll see there's another arrow, drop down arrow for shading. We have background, theme, world, viewport. So if I set this background mode to viewport and I change the color here to a brighter color or a darker color, I'll be able to kind of see this a little bit better. So if we were to open a 2D scene, we'd actually start off with a very light viewport background, like so. Okay, but the problem is this is actually a principles of design problem. We have too much harmony here. I have a light line on a light background, so I can't even see my lines. So I need to introduce some contrast here, right? So that's actually fairly easy. I'll keep the background bright like this. So Matt, to change to drawing, make sure you have your grease pencil object selected, and then up top here to the left, where it says object mode, you're going to switch to draw mode. Okay. All right, and then so now everyone pay attention to this next part. This is also important. We want to change the material or the color of our pencil stroke. Okay, so we're going to go over here to this little orb. This is our material properties. You can hover over it and it'll give you a tooltip. It's going to say material properties on it. And this bottom right area of my screen, this is a properties window. All right, so this up top, this big window here is our 3D viewport. This one in the top right is our outliner, and this one here is our properties. Okay, and the neat thing is in Blender you can change any of these into any other kind of window. So I could actually change this properties window into a 3D viewport, or I could turn my 3D viewport into a properties window. You just have to find the little indicator. It's actually a drop-down menu. You find the indicator in the corner of the window. You can actually change it into something else. So I could change this into a 3D viewport as well, like so. So we can really start customizing our space. Okay. I don't want to do that. I'm showing you what this looks like. I'm going to change this back to a properties window. You can drag on any of these borders to change the distribution, the size of these windows. So Steven, what I did to change the background to white up top here in my viewport shading, where it says viewport, I set that to a light color here. So instead of back, it was set to theme by default. I changed it to viewport and I changed the color here to a light color, but I could change that to anything I want. Yeah. All right. So next up, make sure everyone's with me. Yes, Steven, that's the color tab. Yeah. So if you're still with me, what we're going to do next is very important. We're going to change the material, okay, of our stroke here that we can no longer see because it's light on light. And I'm going to click here, get on this orb. If I hover over it, it's going to say material properties. This is one of the tabs. These are all tabs from my properties window. Okay, so these are various tabs. And I'm going to click on this one. Okay, and you'll see I don't have any materials so far. So I'm just going to add a new one. I'll just hit new here. You'll see once I do that, it actually defaults to a black line, like so. And the way I can change this is I can actually give this a name. Excuse me. Call this, yeah, just call it line. Oops. So I'm just call it line. And then we have a few different options. We have a mode type. So I could do line or dots. If I do dots, you can kind of see what it looks like there. But let's go to a solid line. We have a solid line or textured line. Again, a little bit hard to see. Oops, still on dots. I can't really see a difference with a textured line. Let's leave it as a solid line. And then we have our color, right? So we can basically set the color here. We have a little color picker. Excuse me. And we can choose what color we want this to be. Okay, I'll choose a darker color so that it will read more easily against the backdrop there. Okay. And then that's basically it. I can make more materials. So this is a line material. I can create a fill material. So I can hit new here. And I can either leave this stroke checked, but I can also check on fill. I can choose a fill color like so. And now if I draw again, you'll see that I actually get a shape. Okay, and the neat thing about the way this works is this is it's non-destructive in a sense where I can go back and I can change these colors. So I can set this to oops, change the name here. Let's call it fill. If I decide, oh, I don't like that color, I can go in here and I can change it to something else. I can tweak it, right? So I can get it to the point that I'm happy with it. Okay. All right. And then another cool thing that we can do, we have several different tools here on the left-hand side. We have this paint bucket fill. So I can basically click on something like this and it will fill that in. And what I probably want to do for this, I want to do this on a separate layer so that I can still see the details of my character. Let's actually make one more material here. We'll call this no line fill. We'll uncheck the stroke, parameter, we'll check back on the fill parameter, and I'll change the base color again. I can always tweak this later, but I'll just check, get the, do something like this. All right, so I have a line, I have a fill. Let's change the color of this. All right, and now the last thing that we really want to be aware of, well, one of the last things is we want to be also aware of the layers. Okay, so in Photoshop, in what we'll see in Krita, in a lot of 2D applications or animation softwares, Flash for example, we also have layers, right? We can stack things up and down with layers. Okay. All right, sorry, Alex. Okay. All right, so guys, to add a new material, okay, so let's slow down and back up a little bit. To add new materials, I click on the plus here. Okay. So there's a little plus symbol to the right. It's not that intuitive, but that's what it does. And that's fairly universal throughout Blender. So whenever you see a little menu area like this, or a little kind of a list area like this with a plus and a minus, generally speaking, that means you can add new elements to that list. Okay, so this is no different. So what I've done here to fill it, okay, so the first one was just a line. Okay, by default, when we create something, it's only going to have, where it says surface here, the stroke is going to be checked on. There's going to be that little blue checkbox. That's checked on. But you see fill is not checked. Okay? If we check fill on, you'll see that this becomes a filled in stroke. Okay? And then we can choose the color of the fill, and we can choose the color of the line. Okay, so we have a lot of flexibility here, and it's slightly unintuitive because I know in Photoshop we choose our color, we make a stroke, our color is set, that's it, it's done, right? This is different in the fact that we have, you can think of this as a dynamic palette. So your dynamic palette is really just a reference to your kind of shapes and lines and colors are references to whatever you have set here. Okay, so LM, I'll call you. I don't know your actual name. But you're going to want to go here to where it says fill, and see this where it says base color. You can change the color in there. So on the right, you're going to be able to drag up and down to affect the brightness. And then here in the circle, you can change the saturation and the hue. Okay? Okay, cool. All right. So as I was saying, once you're solid with the materials, okay, we want to kind of get a grasp of the layers. Okay, the layers are fairly straightforward. Layers exist right here. So in the tab just above the materials tab, you'll see this green squiggly line. That's basically our grease pencil layers tab. Okay, so if I click on that, you'll see I have this layer called GP layer, which I can hide, and all the drawing I've done so far exists on that layer. Okay, so I'll just call this test. Okay, I'll call it foreground test, FG test. All right, and now I'll make another layer. Okay, I'll call this BG test. So the same way I made a new material, I can make a new layer just by pressing on this plus key. Okay, it'll give me a new layer on top of the previous layer. I don't believe I can drag it as of yet. So to shift this down, you'll see that these two arrows, I can press the up or down arrows to shift the selected layer up or down in my stack. Okay, so I've shifted my BG test layer to the back. And if I hide my foreground test layer, you'll see that that has my lines, all the drawings I did previously. Okay. Each of these layers also has opacity, so I can actually dial down or up the opacity. All right. And then I'm going to go to my BG test layer. And in here, I'll use my fill tool. Make sure I'm using an appropriate material. Okay, a material with a fill on it. Okay, so now if I click here, you'll see that it fills based on screen space anything that is enclosed by a line. But you'll see that it's actually offset. So it's not necessarily in place, it's going right now according to wherever my camera view is. So if I were to fill in here, like so, you'll see that that is based on my camera view at the depth of the center of the world. So the origin, that's the depth that is drawn at. Okay, because it's 3D, it's got to consider where in space is this kind of stroke going to go. So I can control that here, stroke placement, origin, 3D cursor, surface, stroke. I can change the drawing plane to the view, so projected from my camera, or the front view, okay, the front orthographic view, or the side view, or the top view, or whatever the angle on my 3D cursor is. All right, but by virtue, the draw order, okay, so regardless of what's in front and what's behind, the draw order comes from the layering. So what layer is on top of which layer? Okay, so if my foreground test is on top, the lines and everything on that layer will occlude. They'll cover up the background stuff, regardless of if they're close or far. Okay, so we can use this to have our line art on one layer, okay, and then have our fills on a separate layer. We probably do not want it to be offset. We probably want them to sit on the same plane. So we'd want to kind of tweak that as well. Did I lose everybody? Yeah, so you can go back. Yes, it is confusing. I apologize. So if you're Steven, if you're having trouble, it's probably because you're using a material that's just a line material. So I'm using a fill material. Okay, make sure the fill is checked on. Okay, yeah. So if you do get stuck, you can back up. All right, perfect. All right, so what is next? Next, we are going to we're gonna find a slightly easier way to deal with this, okay? Because it's so Connor, that's a great question, and you can. I'm gonna hide all of these grease pencil layers for now. So you can hide or delete these. I can select one. We can click on the little eyeball to hide it. We can lock it, right? So you can't affect it. We can turn on grease pencil, or sorry, layer, onion skinning, if we want to here. Okay, that's in the case if we have like multiple drawings. But I could just hide these. And then to lock this to a particular plane, okay, so it works a little bit more consistently. Leave this to origin, that's fine. Okay, the only other thing you'd probably want to do, you might set it to surface or 3D cursor depending on what you're trying to do. But for the most part, leaving it at origin should be sufficient. But then what we want to do here for the drawing plane, instead of setting it to view, we're probably going to want to set this to front. Okay, so set that to the front. Okay, so now when we draw, and in order to draw it, I have to make another layer that's visible here. But now if I draw, let me choose a material that I want. And by the way, we can change the size of our brush as well here, up top where it says radius. So I can actually make this thicker, thinner. I can adjust the strength as well to make the line heavier. But all of those lines, you see how they're aligned now to that one axis, or that two axes, this two-dimensional plane. Okay, so I can basically draw directly on here. And there's a lot of other really cool things that we can do. But for now, just play around, have fun with it, and just see what you can do. Try drawing maybe a character or a background or something like that. One of the ways I like to do this, and I didn't tell you guys this last year, but I'm telling you now, if we set the drawing plane to the top, we can do cool things like make a path, right? Or a river or something like that. Okay, put some little rocks in the river. Maybe have some bushes strewn about. And then we can get like a nice kind of guide for perspective, right? So we can kind of do things like so. It'll kind of give us a sense of kind of perspective. So if we're having trouble kind of matching or being able to draw a path correctly in perspective, we can use something like this to help us, right? Excuse me. So I like these kinds of things. I could take it a couple of steps further. I don't want to get too off track here, but a lot of like really neat applications. Really, the limit is kind of what you can think of. But I can do stuff like, oops. If I had something like this. So not only do we have a draw mode, we actually have a sculpt mode as well. Okay, and in the sculpt mode, I have an option here for grab. I can tap F here to change the size of my brush. Okay, and I can press Shift F to change the strength of my brush. And you see I can lift these things up. Oh, is it pinned? Oh, so it's stuck here. So let me set that to view. There we go. And now I can lift this up. So you can make like a surface that's more undulating and things like that, right? So yes, you can sculpt with grease pencil. Yeah, there's a lot more you can do than that too. So it is pretty mind blowing what's possible. It's not quite the same as like working in Photoshop or Krita or TV Paint, but with the amount of flexibility that you have, it's pretty cool. Yes. And for today, I'm giving an intro more than anything, so we're not going super duper in depth into animation, but I might as well show you some other cool things that we can do. So we can also animate this. We can animate this if we're in sculpt mode. Okay, so you guys know how to change modes. We looked at draw mode, but we also have sculpt mode. If we go to sculpt mode, this is probably the easiest way to animate this. If I step forward a few frames, so you can step forward frames in Blender by pressing the left and right arrow keys. Okay, you'll see at the bottom here we have a timeline. Okay, so I can step forward to say frame 10. And I can sculpt this a little bit, like so. Okay, and I can step forward some more, say to frame 20. Oops, I can sculpt this some more, like so. Step forward some more to frame 30. And sculpt it some more. So now you'll see if I kind of scrub through my timeline here, you'll see how it actually changes at each stage. So Ricardo, you went to edit mode probably. Either edit mode or object mode. You want to be in sculpt mode or draw mode. Right now I'm in sculpt mode. Right up top here, top left. All right, so another even cooler thing we can do. In order to do this, I have to show you something something else that I was going to show you anyways. This has nothing to do with animation. This is more so to just do with keeping our grease pencil scenes organized. So please pay attention to what I'm about to show you guys now. At the bottom we have a timeline. Okay, we have a little timeline editor. So just like I showed you, we have our 3D viewport here. We have our our outliner here, and we have our properties panel here. At the bottom, by default, we generally speaking have a animation timeline as well. And this is a good way to kind of scrub through our scene, press play, pause, choose our frame range. Okay, so where are we going to start, where are we going to end our animation. By default, it's set from frame 1 to frame 250. But I'm going to change this to something that's going to give us a little bit more control over our grease pencil. So I'm going to change this from a timeline editor type. Okay, so in the top left of the timeline window, I'm also giving it a little bit more space. I'm going to set this to a dope sheet. Okay, set it to a dope sheet. And in the dope sheet, there's a sub menu here. It says dope sheet. I'll click on that, and I'm going to set that to grease pencil. Once I've done that, I can actually see little diamonds here indicating where my grease pencil keyframes are. Okay, and if I drop down on this little tab for summary, it'll show me each of my layers. So this is probably the best way to work with grease pencils, because here we can easily see all of our layers, okay, in addition to all of our frames, all of our keyframes. We can see it in a glance. And we can actually select our layers and move them around, or our keyframes I should say, and move them around, change the timing, and things like that. Okay. And by the way we select, move things in Blender is by pressing G. Okay, so once I have something selected, if I want to grab it and move it, I press the G key. Okay, and this applies to any 3D geometry. Okay, so if I'm in object mode and I have something selected, you press G, you grab it, you can move it. Left click to confirm its placement, right click to cancel it. Okay, or you can press enter to confirm its placement, or escape to cancel it. To rotate is R to rotate something. Okay, and S to scale it. Okay, so G to grab and move, R to rotate, and S to scale. You don't have to hold those keys down, you just tap it, and all you have to do is drag your mouse. It's in live transformation mode. You confirm your transformation by left clicking or pressing enter. You cancel out the movement by right clicking or pressing escape. So Steven, once you've set this to dope sheet, okay, so once you open your change this from an animation timeline to a dope sheet editor, you see these are our animation editors, right? We want to set it to dope sheet. This is the part that gets confusing. We do want to change this off of the default dope sheet to grease pencil mode. Okay, so we do want to set it to grease pencil mode. That's the way we manage and work with our grease pencil keys. And then you'll click summary. Where it says summary, you just have to drop that down. Okay, and then all your grease pencil layers. So all these layers, you have access to them here. This is basically them. All right. We can also add new layers in here. So I can basically select my layers like so. They'll be highlighted in green when the layer is selected. I can press plus here to add a new layer. Okay, and I can change the opacity of a layer, I believe. How did I do that? I thought I could do it here. Hmm. Maybe not. I thought I could. I was doing experiments with this, and I was almost certain that I could change the opacity. Oh, here it is. So if I, just like we have a navigation panel up here, so we can toggle open and close our navigation panel here in the 3D viewport. We also sometimes have navigation and tools panels in our other editor windows. Okay, we do have one here, and so you'll see if I select a layer, I can actually change its opacity in here. Let's go to draw mode. Okay, and this is a hidden layer, so I can't even see it. But if I were to change the opacity here, you can see that I can do that from here instead of having to go up into my grease pencil. So that way I could have my all my materials here in my properties tab, and then have all my grease pencil layers here, and even access things like my opacity. You'll also see that we have a blend style, so I can set this to add, subtract, multiply, divide. We don't have as many options as we do in Photoshop, but we do have a few. So pretty cool. But the thing that I wanted to show you is how we can actually interpolate our animations. And now this can only be done in like very certain situations. Okay, there's a button to add grease pencil towards the top of the screen. Where's that? If I right click here, flip to the top, where? Oh, these here? Oh yeah. If you lost your diamonds, you might not be in grease pencil mode anymore, Caleb. So make sure you're first and foremost on your dope sheet. And then second, make sure you are set to grease pencil mode. Otherwise, maybe you deleted your layers. Otherwise, they should be visible. And you might also have to just, where it says summary, you just might have to kind of uncollapse that. And do you have layers? Go to this one and just make sure you actually have some layers there. Yeah, so you'll have GP layer. That's going to be default. That's going to be the default name. I actually changed these layers. You can double click on a layer to change it, or right up top here at the header, you can actually change it there. So I can call this Gavin's layer. I think. Oh, no, I changed the grouping. So I changed the grouping there. To change the actual layer, I do have to double click on it. Okay, cool. All right, so what I want to show you guys is really cool. You can only do this if you haven't introduced new geometry into, or new grease pencil lines into the layer. It'll only work if, like, basically this frame has the same data. I've just moved the positions of the data. And this frame has the same data. Again, I've just moved the positioning, the positions of that data. And I'll just hide this part that's not going to be affected. But if I select a layer, in this case, second layer, and if I go in between two keyframes, like so, and then if I go up top here to draw, and then choose interpolate, interpolate sequence, you'll see I get all these little smaller blue dots, and this is like allows me to, it basically makes a frame to frame transition between those two things I had. Okay, so you can say I scrub through that there. And I can do that here if I put my cursor in between these two keyframes and do the same thing. Instead of getting a major jump from here to here, I can gradually transition from this to that over this amount of keyframes, or over this amount of frames. So again, all I have to do is position my time scrubber in between the two keyframes that I want to interpolate between. I will then choose draw here, interpolate sequence. There's a hotkey here, Control Shift E. Okay, but I'll just hit that. So now we'll see I get this, and that is basically that. So I can press the space bar here. You see I get a more gradual transition. All right, so that is something we can also do. This works in certain situations. It's not something I necessarily want us to do this semester, but there are certain situations where if you really want to make something very fluid, you can do that. Okay. So you might have missed it, Joshua, but basically what you do is you have to go, you select your layer that you want to animate between. Let's do it from scratch on a new layer actually. So let's make a brand new layer here. Okay. Let's delete all the other layers too actually. Oh, these are locked. So let's delete these, unlock them. Alright, so I have one layer, nothing on it yet. Set this to front. So what I'll do, I'll just have let's have like a seaweed tentacle or something like that. Okay, so we have this. So I actually went forward on my frames, but yeah, so let's say I have this, and then I go over here to sculpt mode. So this is not the best way to go about this. There's other ways where you can have more control, but I don't want to throw too much at you guys. I already thrown so much your way, especially for like just an intro. We will kind of dig into this more and more, guys, so this will become clearer and clearer as we go. You can hold down the shift key as well to allow you to smooth things out. Smooth here. There we go. So basically, oh man, I did that on the same layer, same frame. So that was totally pointless. So when we make a change like this, we want to make sure we're on a different frame. So that was a mistake on my part. Actually, what I'm going to do, I'm going to take this as the new first frame, and I can duplicate this. There's probably a menu option to duplicate it, but I'm just going to press Shift D, which is the duplicate hotkey in Blender. So with this selected, Shift D, it'll immediately put me into move mode, and I'll just drop this off here near the end of my sequence so I get a nice looping animation. Okay, and then I'll go to the middle. So this is 250, so let's go to about 125. And then I will grab there are, like I said, there are better ways to do this, but I just don't want to throw too much your way just yet. As much as I'm throwing at you, I do apologize. Doing this a few times, it will kind of become second nature, don't worry. And I will show you even more things that we can do with this as we progress. Okay, so let me go here and smooth this out. There we go. Alright, so see what I have here now. I have on frame 1, we have our, say, our seaweed bent one way, then it's bent the other way, and then it kind of goes back. I basically have it going to the same first frame at the end. Okay, so what I want to do to interpolate this, Krita, we will look at Krita, guys. Krita is a lot more straightforward, yes, and I'll give you the option between using them. I would encourage you to kind of try to get comfortable using Blender, but yeah. All right, so yeah, no tutorials this week. Yeah, so next week, guys. So what I'm going to do though, with my cursor, okay, so down here, once we have manipulated our grease pencil object, our layer. Okay, so we've changed it with our sculpting tools. Doesn't have to be like this, but you can change it however you want. To interpolate now, we're going to go to View, up top here. Make sure that we have keyframe 1 on one side and keyframe 2 on the other side. Make sure actually we have the layer selected as well. So make sure the layer is selected. If the layer is not selected, it will not know where you want to apply this. So if your layer is not green, highlighted green like this, it will not work. Okay, so make sure your layer is selected. All right, and then we'll go here to View. And we will choose, was it View? Where was it? I might have to be in draw mode. So I think I have to be in draw mode or edit mode. Yeah, so looks like I have to be in draw mode or edit mode. So if I go to draw, while I'm in draw mode, draw, interpolate sequence, you'll see now it kind of lerps between those two positions. It's not great. Right, we've got a kind of a very linear interpolation. We're losing one of the principles of animations, which is an arc, and we'll talk about that next week. But today is just kind of familiarizing ourselves with the some of the tools. So interpolate, sequence. So you'll see here now it just basically lerps to one extreme and then kind of goes back to the other. And that's it. Yes. Yeah, so guys, I will you can rewatch this video for sure, definitely, and you can even rewatch it right now. I will share the link in Canvas. Okay, so you guys can always go back to any of the lectures from this term and be able to rewatch them. And even better, you'll be able to rewatch it right away after class. So you got an error, Joshua. Your layer probably was not selected. All right, so that's basically that. All right, so let's take a break, guys. We went for quite a long while there. Let's take a 5 to 10 minute. Let's take a 10-minute break. So we'll start again at 7:15 around there, and then I want to show you guys some examples of animations. That oh, actually, sorry. Before we take a break, we went through a big long process just to get to this point. I want to show you an easier way that we can get to the same stage. All right, the easy way is to basically go here, File, New, 2D Animation. Don't save. And it's got it all set up for us already. Okay, so we actually have our dope sheet. It's already set to grease pencil mode. Okay, our background color here is already set. All right, the viewport is already set to a white color. We have here, okay, we have all of our tools here in our properties. And if you press N here in the viewport and scroll down a little bit, you'll also be able to see your tools here as well. Okay, but that is basically how this works. It immediately also puts you into draw mode, so you can basically start drawing and animating. And it also sets the draw mode to be at the origin and to the front plane. And it also puts us as makes us look through our camera at the default. So it actually positions our camera in a very logical spot. Okay, so if we want to go out and render this animation after the fact, it's pretty easy to do so. So what I want you to do, ultimately, just play around with this. Feel free to play around with this while we're on break. A lot of times what I will expect is that you're going to kind of work iteratively on your animations as well. So you're going to plan things out potentially on one layer. Okay, so this would be, say, your roughs. Okay, and that's where you block everything out. You can adjust the opacity. Oh, so here, if I do it this way, I can actually see the opacity here as well. So this is what I was looking for in the other scene. I haven't figured out how to set that up in the viewport or in the grease pencil window. Maybe it's one of these options in the view. Show sliders maybe, or something like that. But anyways, if I have this layer, and then I have another layer on top, and then let's say we have that, let's change our opacity and our strength. Okay, you can zoom in. You can also press Control Spacebar, guys. Control Spacebar to zoom in onto a particular window. Control Spacebar to go back to the way it was before. Okay, so whatever window I have my cursor hovered over, I can zoom into that. But yeah, so I can do this. I'm getting like slightly strange result. So here I'm just going to tweak the opacity. Stroke. Okay, so it's the strength, the opacity is being affected by pressure, so I don't want that to be the case. I just want the radius to be affected by pressure, so that I can get a nice kind of sharp, clean line here. So I changed that up top here. We also have lazy mouse. If you hold down Shift, you can get a nice kind of smooth lazy mouse interpolation going there, so you can get a little bit more precision with your lines. Okay, and so much to talk about, but we also even have like a snippets cutter, so you can cut away overshoots. like so. All right, so let's actually take a break now, guys. I don't know how to handle this with the stream. If I pause the stream, I don't know what's going to happen. I'll pause it, and then we'll come back in about... we'll do 10 minutes. So let's do 7:20, okay? So I'm going to pause this. So I just unpaused it because I added a note. I'm just going to see if it pops up. Maybe I have to pause it on OBS. Stop streaming. So I don't want to stop the stream completely. Will it make a difference if I stop the stream? Will it... Oh, it stayed on pause when I paused it? Okay. Well, that's not good. I see. Yeah, I'd rather keep it all as one stream. Okay. Okay. I think in yes, Aiden, this is being recorded. Yeah, yeah. Okay. All right. So guys, we'll just I'll just keep it running. We'll just be on a short break, and then we'll resume afterwards. Oh, because if I pause it on my side, all I'm pausing is the playback. So it's just the same as if you guys were to pause it. Right. So if you want, you can go back and watch the last 5-10 minutes, Ricardo. I showed you easy mode. Okay guys, I will be right back, alright? Just give me a few minutes. Alright guys, so I feel like 5 more minutes is a really long time, but it's okay, we'll wait. Any questions while we're waiting? What I want you guys to do, even though we don't have like a weekly activity this week, I would love for you to at least practice and see what can be done. Make a very simple animation in Blender. Okay, so what I'm going to do now, like, you don't have to do it, I don't expect you to do it, but if you had like a character, so let's say you had something just a simple character. Take a character maybe you did last semester, or a character you did last semester, and just do like an A-B drawing of your character. Okay, and you'll find that once I start a new drawing, okay, if I start a brand new drawing on a different frame, the last drawing looks like it disappears. Okay, but what actually happened is it just kind of got tucked away. So it's still there, but turn off my onion skin. And then like just see what it looks like to kind of go back and forth between a couple of different drawings. And I'll give you a sense of what we're planning to do this semester. And this is using one of the animation principles that we will be covering called anticipation. Okay. Also squash and stretch. So we can squash the character down. Right? And also anticipate him like doing a take or something like that. He's going to kind of get surprised by something he sees or whatever. Probably remove those legs. But that's the idea, is we kind of step backwards and forward through our animation and kind of get a sense of like what what looks right, you know, what works, what doesn't, what works and what doesn't work. And again, if we could kind of get a feel for this in just simple lines, I mean, even better, right? And then align our character to that afterwards. And the nice thing about this, again, is we can go in with our sculpt tools. If our drawing's almost there, but it's not quite there, we can say, oh, let me tweak this, right? Let's tweak that. And all that. So anyways, this is, I'd like for you guys to play with that. By the way, if I've approached it like this, I can't do the interpolation trick that I showed you before, because these, it's not the same data anymore. I've basically done new lines. So you'll see if I click on this layer, and if I go here to draw, interpolate, sequence. Oh, it's tried to work. Didn't quite work great, but it did something. That's kind of interesting. That's kind of cool, actually. Very abstract effect. I could use this for something, or something else. So I made the circle bigger by pressing F. So F will change the size, the area of influence, and then Shift F will change the strength. 1 will be full strength, 0 will be 0 strength. So Joshua, the reason for that is your mouse has opacity pressure sensitivity. So to turn that off, up here where it says strength, just hit this little radial, or this little icon to the right of the strength parameter. Turn that off, and then you'll get a dark line like I am. All right, so let's get started, guys. So the first half here, we covered like what we're gonna do this semester. We talked about Blender, which is one of the tools that we're gonna use. And what I'd like to do now is just go over some animation examples. So Joshua, just let me know if that made sense, what I explained just now. I want to show you guys some examples of what I think are good animation. So I'm going to just load up what I found on Pinterest. And I've started making just a board, and there's so much good stuff. But I just want to give you kind of some inspiration for what I hope we can achieve this semester, or we can aim for. Where is it? There we go. Okay, so there's some stuff in here that is games applicable, and there's some stuff that's a little bit more abstract. For the most part, I've tried my best to include things that I think are the most interesting, or the most fluidly and well animated based on the animation principles. There are a few cycles of like people and animals and things like that. But yes, this is being recorded. Oh, sorry, Aiden, I keep seeing your old comment on Google, on the Google Hangouts or Google Meets. So now the line is light. So make sure that you're in your materials, Joshua, that you have a dark colored line. And also make sure that up top in Blender, the strength parameter is high. It's set to 1. Okay? Otherwise, it won't be dark. Set it to 1. Make sure this is turned off. The pressure, use pressure strength. Turn that off. Increase your radius if you need to. So you get a thicker brush stroke. And go from there. Alright. Yeah, it tripped me up too. I was like, why is my stroke so faint? And that's why. It was the pressure dynamics on the... but this is actually a pretty nice line. This is a really nice. I don't know if I can change the profile, the fall off, the curve. Let's see, advanced, active, smooth, hardness, stroke, smooth, iterations, trim stroke ends. Oh, and we have like a lot of cool parameters here. We didn't even look. There's so much we could do with this, guys. It's like we're really, like, I keep telling myself I want to start working in grease pencil more, even to do just like 2D illustrations, because there's so much potential here, you know. Even just with like having a real-time animated jittery line, like there's a lot that we can do. So for example, again, I don't want to get, you know, too involved with this, but there's things we can do like make it jitter. So I can basically add a modifier. So add a modifier, a noise modifier. And you'll see what happens when I play. I have to turn on my viewport shading, so I have to make sure it's in a rendered mode. But if I play now, you'll see the animation lines automatically shake a little bit. Like that's for free. I didn't do anything. That's like just adding a simple modifier here, where I can adjust things like how much position, how shaky does the position get, how shaky does the strength get, the thickness, etc. And how big is the scaling and the noise, right? So there's a lot of like really, really neat things that we can do here. It's all for free, right? So it's pretty powerful stuff. And I can assign this to only affect one layer on its own. I can, if I don't want it to affect every layer, I can, you know, do cool things. And that brush I had almost looks like watercolor too. It's pretty cool. So anyways, so onion skin. So onion skin, Nathaniel, it depends on if you're using 2D animation mode. So if you went to File, New, 2D animation, if you've done it that way, it's a little easier to set up onion skin. If not, you'll have to do it, set it turn on in 2 places. But it's right here. Basically right here, right on our layer. See this little checkbox next to the eyeball? That's basically our onion skin. Or at least it should be. Okay, so the next part you might have to turn on is up here. In our viewport overlays, you have to turn on onion skin here as well. For some reason, I'm not seeing it either. I don't know why. It depends on which view mode you're in. So if you're in rendered mode, you won't see it. You have to either be in this mode, viewport shading, or so in one of these 2 modes. Solid mode or material preview mode. And then you'll see the onion skin. To change the strength of the onion skin, I believe you do that here. And then you can change the number of keyframes before and after here. I'm in viewport shading, switch to solid mode, is still not there. Huh. Interesting. And you have more than one drawing frame? You have to have more than one drawing frames too, I believe. And then make sure you go into your layers and your properties, go to the layers tab, and then you can look at the settings here. You can also turn it on here if for whatever reason, if that makes a difference. So, but I know this tripped me up before. I had to have it turned on here, and I had to turn it on here in my viewport overlays, grease pencil onion skin. And then I also had to, I guess you also have to make sure that you're on, you're not on final render mode. You're on either of these two modes. Interesting. Maybe, oh, you found it? Was it this? Oh, interesting. So that's probably a bug. Could be a bug. Okay, cool. All right, guys. So yeah. So I think we were done with Blender, but I was showing you, yeah, there are cool things that we can do, and it gets me excited. I have to do some like motion graphics-y stuff this month, actually, for a project I'm working on, and I plan to do it in Blender. So I'll see more about what can be done in there. But so, for example, oh man, I apologize, guys. I'm getting carried away here, but it's just so cool. Imagine I tell you guys I need to do a animated title card for your game, right? And you're like, oh man, that sounds like a lot of work. I'm just like, that's something I need to see for your GDW assignment. And then you say, okay, fine. And then you say this, you do this. And this is basically kind of like what I did. So if you have that, right, and then you add a modifier to it, like this one. Okay, so the modifiers all are in the wrench. So the wrench parameter here, if I click on that, add modifier, there's a whole bunch we can add, but the noise is one of them. And then I basically press play. You kind of get that animation almost for free, right? Not that I want you to do something as simple as that, but stuff like this is pretty cool. Just to see things moving makes a huge difference. Like even if I had like a drawing of a, oops, let me do this on another layer as well. So you can almost picture like one of those TFO, what is it? NFB kind of animations, those artistic animations. But why not put this in a game? Why not make your game, you know, like a little bit more dynamic and interesting? Okay, so you could have this on one layer, right? And then if you play that, you know, you get that kind of like NFB style. It's a held animation or it's a held drawing, but it's like way more interesting. You just have to tweak these parameters so it's not too much movement, right? But yeah, a lot of cool things that you can do. No assignments today. No assignments today. All right, so guys, sorry, I did get sidetracked here, but what I want to look at is some cool animations. So these do a really good job of conveying different principles of animation, which we will cover next week, but things like slow in, slow out. This one also does a great job of like integrating the principles of design. So really good use of colors, contrast, to make this more visually appealing. Okay, but some of the principles of animation like arcs, slow in, slow out, overlapping action, secondary animation, anticipation, it's all there, right? I don't expect you to know what they all are. I don't even know what this is, but a lot of cool stuff on Dribble, DRIBBL, .le, or sorry, BBLE.com. A lot of professional motion graphics artists doing really cool, slick animations. But all this stuff would be great in a game, right? And if you were able to execute something to this degree, it would be phenomenal. So you don't always need tons of detail. Really, you just need a really good movement. This one's great. I don't know if you guys can see this as like good, like, is that if you're dropping frames or not, but it's really cool. So start looking at examples of animation from your favorite games with 2D animation or even 3D animation. Start looking at examples of good animation on Dribble, on Pinterest, or any forum dedicated to like animation. DeviantArt has a ton of like really slick pixel animation and regular animations. Twitter has a lot of really good stuff. Here are some cycles. So run cycles, walk cycles, things that will be applicable in games, because your character is going to have an idle in all likelihood. Again, this stuff's like a little bit more artistic than we're probably going to do, but feel free. Like if you want to make a game that has a very strong graphic statement, it's not like the norm, why not, right? By all means. I think that's kind of what people are looking for nowadays in games. It's not all just the regular pixel art style games, you know. That's also great, but there are games like Gree, you know, like that have like a really cool, unique art style. You know, Limbo even did some cool things, right? Not super pushed stylistically, but they simplified the color palette a lot. So again, I showed these examples. I think they're good. They're good, like effective walk and run cycles. They show squash and stretch. One of the principles of animation is exaggeration. So this is definitely exaggerated. It's not even that many drawings, but it's really well done. And there's overlapping action. There's slow in, slow out. I haven't seen this one, but it looks cool. That one's pretty good. This one's pretty good. So you see the hair, right? Nice run cycle, nice solidity to the whole thing. Again, not a ton of detail or anything like it, but the shapes are consistent, the forms are consistent, and it just reads properly. It reads well. Timing is right. This is a simple falling animation. It's just a looping cycle. See the nice seaweed motion going through the hair. All right, it hooks up perfectly with the first frame. It's repeats, and it just works. Some of these are a little more technical, but we can see like breaking up a complex animation into smaller pieces. You see how things like anatomy can be helpful when we look at this, and the anatomy becomes the driver of the movement. Really nice like animal anime. This one's like insanely good. Like wow. Like this one blew me away. I was like, holy, that's good. Yeah. On the girl running? Yeah, that was really good. Check out this one. And it's not perfect, but it's not perfect. I can pick things out, but the principles are so well used and the animation is so fluid that you almost don't even care. You're like, yeah, it's kind of wrong, but it looks really good. It moves nicely. So you're kind of more forgiving as a result of that, right? This one's also really good. Look at the tail. Look at the little smoke kicking up. It's even snorting out some smoke. The hair. And these are very good examples, guys. Don't get me wrong. These are not like a random few animations I found. These are very, very well done. I found others that weren't as well done, but I just didn't include those, right? So this is inspiration stuff. Games like Celeste have fairly simple animations. Oh, I saw something cool there. I haven't seen this. I don't know if this is good or not, but that's okay. Another cool one. Timing is slightly off, but again, very nicely and fluidly animated. This one's simple, super simple, but also really nicely animated. Look at the fur moving on the back. You see how it kind of moves separately from the body? It's like a slightly later. And same with the antennae or the ears or whatever they are, and the tail. That's called overlapping action, right? And that's something that basically you have a primary driver of the movement, and then you have like flaps of fabric or hair or whatever that just kind of go along for the ride, you know? And that is like excellently well executed. And on Pinterest in particular, you will find like more examples than you can even look at. Like these are pretty cool too. But I actually like this better. Even though it's not as drawn as well, it's simpler. The animation is better. It's like more fluid. It works way nicer. It's not trying to do too much. Again, another stylized. This might even be rotoscoped in a stylistic way, but really nicely done. One of those forever looping animations. So yeah, oh, of course, you guys know this game, right? Idle animation, beautifully done. Really, really nice. That game, I don't know if you guys have played it, but that game that's a work of art. That is impressive stuff. Like when I played that game, I was like, this is It's not a game anymore. It's like it's art or literature. It's not. You can't judge it the way you would judge a regular game, right? It's beautiful, beautiful stuff. And if you can really bring things to life like this, there's no more satisfying feeling. It's a lot of work, to animate things, but literally there is no more satisfying feeling. Maybe making something interactive, that's also satisfying. But if you do both, make it interactive and animated, then it's like, whoa, that's cool. So let's back up one level. So tile sets, this is something we'll also be doing this semester. And this is basically making backgrounds. So we want to make a simple kit of tiles that can be reused. We can reconfigure them in a whole bunch of different ways to make all kinds of different environments. And if you watch this again, the grass is animated, right? That's something we might take for granted. There's an animated waterfall in the background, right? These are things that they're there, but they help kind of bring more life to your games, to your projects. The other thing when thinking about this, we want to think about the principles of design, the elements of design. We want to think about managing and planning where our contrast is going to be, where our harmony is going to be, and in doing so, make the most beautiful kind of environment we possibly can, while at the same time making sure that our character is properly readable, and our enemies read properly. We want to kind of plan out and design everything, right, in our game in terms of the colors and the contrast and the rhythm and the shapes and everything. So it's as aesthetically pleasing as possible, and we don't need fancy art. Really, you could just have blocks, but if you choose the colors wisely, you can make something that's very, very beautiful, right? And that's ultimately how you want to start. Start with like high level, simple design choices that are aesthetically pleasing. And if it looks good at that stage, you can add in the details subordinated to those bigger kind of design choices, and it will still look good. Okay, so this is basically what we're going to do. We'll make, let me see if I can just click on this. Okay, so it's hard to tell, but we're going to basically make a central tile. We're going to make a roof floor tile that sits above it, and then other unique tiles as necessary, like ramp tiles, sidewall tiles, ceiling tiles, etc. But they should all stem from that initial central tile. So we'll look at a process for doing that, and also maybe a couple of tools that allow us to do it. This is a good example. But you can kind of see how the tile set has been set up here, where let's go to DeviantArt. So you can see how the tile set has been set up. So we do have those grass ground tiles that transition into a corner piece that transitions into a wall. And we have these ramp tiles that we'll be able to hook up with these floor tiles. And each one is a square. So we set it up on a grid so that we can basically customize our levels however we feel like doing. And then we have swappable elements that we can just stick on top, right? So ultimately that's what I'd like for us to do this semester. So we're going to speak to all aspects of a 2D game, art-wise, as necessary. So start thinking now maybe about what kind of visual art style you want to have in your projects when you meet with your GDW groups. I don't know if you have GDW yet, but when you do, start brainstorming like look and feel, overall aesthetic, inspirations, design choices that you want to make. And I strongly encourage you, don't abandon what we did last semester with the 7 Ps. That stuff should apply regardless of what you're doing, and try to implement that in this project as well. Think about what is the core emotion or feeling that you want to convey through your game. And then how can you support that with the visuals and the animation? All right, so ultimately that's kind of what we're aiming at this year, guys, and I think it's going to be a fun year. It'll be challenging, of course, but it'll be also very rewarding, and I think you guys will get a lot out of it. So I'm looking forward to seeing where we get this term. Just keep me posted if you guys have questions or anything like that. You know, this was a taste this week. We'll jump into things more formally starting next week. All right. Cool. Yeah, Krita. We'll look at Krita next class, and then we'll probably do something where in the tutorials we'll probably do more Krita, or the labs we'll do more Krita, and then the lectures we'll probably do more Blender. But I'll be flexible and I'll adjust as necessary. Okay. All right, guys. So we'll wrap here if there's no questions. But I look forward to seeing you guys next week. All right. So again, next week we'll start with Google Meets, and then I'll share a link with you guys for YouTube. All right. Thanks, everybody. Take care. All right. See you guys. And I'll share the link for the YouTube video on Canvas. Thanks, everybody. I'm gonna log off now. Take care.